What's up, comic book fans? Pete here from Comic Books Transformed. We're me and my good friend over there, Brian, Mr. Core's hair over there. We talk about comic books that have been adapted into streaming shows and movies. We are almost at the end of the third season of one of our very, very favorite shows to cover, Invincible. And it's funny because Brian over there, he has gone and read all of Invincible now at this point.
Yeah, so we didn't. So first, we should say that we're not covering the episode that was released today.
Right.
We're covering episode 6 from last week. We're going to save 7 and 8, wrap it together because we believe it's going to be the Invincible War storyline wrapped together. So that seems like a good way to encapsulate it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I powered through compendiums 2 and 3 somewhere after the first or second episode this season. So that is somewhere in the realm of 96 issues.
Holy God. Wow.
And had we recorded this last week, I might have been able to remember a single thing about any of those 96 issues.
Yep.
Now it's all mush.
Yeah. And no, I understand that. And it's been like that watching this show too for me, where I'm like, okay, I remember that happened, but like, did this happen? And I was kind of using you as a reference. I remember this whole storyline with Powerplex where he shows up, and it's sort of like this little mini story within this big epic. But it pretty much unfolds the way that it does in the comic too, right?
Yeah, not much is different. So basically there's a guy whose family is injured in the battle between Invincible and Omni-Man in Chicago, and he just wants revenge on it. Kind of adding a layer of moral complexity on, what has been kind of like the theme of the season here is, do people get to redeem themselves, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
And Invincible is all up in Cecil's face about working with guys like D.A. Sinclair and Darkwing 2 because they've done terrible things. But in his own indirect way, he's done terrible things as well. And that kind of is maybe making him reconsider about his position stance on her, maybe not. We'll see how the show takes it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good point. That is like one of the overarching themes. And I remember like seeing this whole sequence, and it made a lot of sense considering how awful that was, the battle between Omni-Man and Invincible. That sequence with Omni-Man and Invincible, that happened way before Man of Steel came out, right? In the comics.
Yes, definitely in the comics. Yeah.
I remember like when that happened in the comics, when that issue came out, that was a big moment in comic books. Like when that reveal happened and the dad fights him and it's so brutal. Like that was a game changer when that happened.
Yeah, I still think, even having read the entire series, I still think it's one of the most impactful scenes in the entire book.
Yeah, exactly. So this stuff with Powerplex. So, I mean, obviously, if you guys haven't caught on, we're talking about episode 6, right, of season 3, right? And so the whole episode just focuses on this man whose sister, I'm assuming it's like his sister-in-law and his daughter.
Oh, yeah, yes, because it does look like they're different ethnicity.
Right.
Well, maybe it's like an adoption situation, something like that. They did not clarify that whatsoever. But yeah, he says it's his sister and his I don't remember. I guess it's his niece. I don't remember his niece or nephew. I can't remember.
Yeah. Well, in the show, it's his niece and it's the sister, and they never say like my sister-in-law, my adopted sister, but she looks like she's like African American. The daughter's African American. He's this blonde guy. He looks the way that he does in the comic.
Yes.
I think they might have like race swapped the sister.
Yeah.
But I mean that doesn't matter. It's still the same point. But the whole sequence reminds me of Batman v Superman, because they're kind of seeing this gigantic battle at ground level where it's like these two gods fighting and just demolishing a city. And then, of course, one person is just obsessed with getting revenge on them.
Yeah. So Powerplex is Batman, but they didn't have that moment where they realized that their parents had the same first name. So they couldn't come to an agreement.
That would have solved it right there.
If Powerplex's mom was named Debbie.
Yes. Exactly. Save Debbie. But what always bothered me about the comics also bothered me about this episode, where it just kind of feels weird that he's super obsessed with his sister's death. Like, because he himself has a son and a wife. And so I think like the intensity that he has, I feel like it makes more sense if it's like his wife and his son died versus his sister.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's still his family. You don't know what their family situation was. Like we're saying that maybe it's an adopted person, or maybe that person did something significant for him in his life that allowed him to get to the level he was at in his own life. It does seem a little weird that that's like the forefront of his day-to-day, and his like wife and kid are just like a part of it, I guess, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah.
The wife's like, yeah, we gotta get Invincible, and the kid's is like, yeah, play with me, daddy. sorry, son, I have to go think about killing Invincible.
Yeah. But that's what I like about that, at least, because it is weird, right? But I like the fact that the wife is so into it. She's almost like more into it than him.
Yeah.
Because he starts to have doubts, and she's like, "Oh, you better go fucking kill Invincible." That's
I think in the comic, she's even like the one that. No, she does suggest the because Power Books fails at fighting Invincible a few times. Like he goes out and does stuff, and Invincible doesn't show up.
Right.
So they up the ante a little bit, and I think it was the wife's idea to do that in the comic. I don't know if it was as clear in the show here, but yeah, like she's very into it.
Yeah. Well, like one thing I didn't understand too was, did he like inherently have powers, and then the suit that he wore like made them more powerful, or is like, because it looked like he had like electrical current before he put the suit on? Is it just is that like a byproduct of his suit?
Yeah, so I think he had some very low level powers, and he put on that suit, and he stabbed himself with those like electrical plugs, and that amplified his powers. The comic, he was working at the GDA, whatever it is.
Oh, with Cecil?
I think he was working there, and I think he was like stealing this technology in order to amplify his powers.
Mm-hmm. In the show, he's an employee from there too, though, right? Because like, who's the guy with the glasses that dies like all the time?
Donald,
like, because Donald at the end of the episode is like, this will never happen again. He was using this tech. There's a part where they discover, or they talk about the probes that are following Mark, and he's like, he didn't make those.
Yeah.
That's not GDA tech, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Oh
yeah, because they said they can't remove them from his body. That's how they knew he was working there. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. But like the whole thing, like the whole main talking point that I have that I was going to bring to this is that they got Aaron Paul to be the actor. And like, how do I explain this? Like, I love Aaron Paul, and I've seen him in a few different things, but like Breaking Bad is like one of my favorite things I've ever seen in my life. Like, I love Breaking Bad. And you haven't fucking seen it, have you?
I didn't finish it.
Oh, what? What? You're giving me Breaking Bad blue balls over here, man.
Yeah, I got to like season 5, and
what?
Yes. I'll explain some other time. Yeah.
Oh God, the ending is so good.
Yes, yeah. I know what happens in the ending. Essentially, I've had it spoiled, I suppose. Yeah.
Oh, I'm like so sad. Okay, so then that's good that at least you watched like most of the show, because you know his voice, you know what he's like, and like, were you just kind of thinking it's Aaron Paul the whole time you're watching the show?
Yeah. So another show that Aaron Paul is in is BoJack Horseman. He plays this kind of like stonery guy named Todd, and all I can think of is that he just sounds like a really angry version of Todd in this episode.
Oh, okay.
I think he was like hamming it up a little bit too much, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed.
It's funny. I was reading a couple of reviews just to refresh my memory what happened before this, and people were saying like, "Oh, Aaron Paul was so good," and I'm like, "Was he?"
I think he was kind of just being like Jesse, because I mean Jesse kind of has a similar dynamic too, where he feels like justice isn't happening, especially towards the end of the show. He feels like Walter's getting away with everything. So he has that kind of thing. And and he screams and stuff a lot in the show. He screams a lot in this episode where he's powering up and
he didn't scream bitch though, which is something I felt like it would have like sealed that deal there, you know.
I totally understand, man. Like I haven't made the thumbnails for this episode yet, and I keep wanting to make that in the thumbnail, like something bitch, you know, and I check it out because I think that like YouTube just puts restrictions no matter what you put on it.
Yeah.
But it's funny because there's not much to talk about with this episode. The stuff with Powerplex is the majority of the episode. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's going on.
There's a couple of things there. There is one of the things is Rex creates the belt for Monster Girl.
Oh my god! Yeah. Okay. Good.
I'm sorry, not Rex.
Robot.
And then Rex and Shrinking Ray kind of like advance their relationship a little bit, but at the same time, Ray says she's going to quit the Guardians.
Yes. Okay. And see, to me, that stuff is way more interesting than Powerplex stuff. I think that like Steven Yeun's performance, like always, is a highlight. I just love Steven Yeun.
Yes.
And I love the interaction they have in the end. But to me, like that sequence where is it Rhodey is what they call Robot when he's not in the suit?
Rudy.
Okay. Yeah, I just really love that sequence. I love the way they frame it. I really love the stuff with Rex and Shrinking Ray. That's probably my favorite part of the episode.
Yeah, no, it's really clear to me that they're setting up some tragedy. Although, you know, both those characters have been through quite a bit. You know, something bad's gonna happen. You know, Rex's whole thing is that he was experimented on. That's how he got his powers. His parents basically gave him away, and that's all he knows in his life is being a hero. So he's not really quite ready to give it up. I think we both do know what happens in the comics, and I'm very curious if they deviate from that.
Yeah, I think that every big thing that you've seen in the comics, I think all those big points are going to happen because I don't think that they've changed any big points previous to this yet in the show.
I would say one of the biggest changes is Shrinking Ray living. I mean, that's and that's arguably not that massive of a deal. I don't think, you know?
Yeah. Right, because it's so interesting when you read something from years ago and then you're like, okay, I got to remember for this show that I'm going to talk about it on. There's just these sort of like milestone points, these sort of like anchor points that, you know, isn't that what they have in Across the Spider-Verse where it's called like anchor points or whatever?
No, the canon events.
Canon events, right? And so there's like certain canon events that like I can't forget them. Like it's just there's no way I could forget these moments.
Yeah. And they've been fairly faithful with hitting all those points in maybe a slightly different order with very little deviation.
Yeah, I just really love that Rex is like I don't know how to be anything besides a superhero. Like that's what my whole life has been.
Yeah, and he does not get that unless that came from like a Guardians of the Globe or like one of the side series comics, which I did not read. I only read the Invincible proper the entire way through, and that nothing else. So unless that came from somewhere else, there, like to me, that's an addition. Flesh out the character, which is I see as a big positive.
Absolutely. So we have those two sequences, and then we have all the stuff with Powerplex, where you're really just following him for most of the episode. He comes into contact with Invincible. Eve is there at one point too. She shows up.
Eve is there against one of the battles, I believe, because I think he gets away.
Yeah,
or something. Because he shows up at
the memorial.
The memorial, and Eve's like, "Let me take care of this. You shouldn't be shown here."
Right.
And then that's when they up the ante to have Powerplex's wife and child be part of the plot to lure Invincible out.
Yeah, that really bothered me when he bound his son. He's like taking the cuffs off him or whatever, the rope or whatever you had on him.
Yeah,
I hate
that was hard to watch. Yeah, and
for a cartoon,
Yes, and then ultimately he Powerplex sort of has like powers equivalent to like Bishop from X-Men or maybe Sebastian Shaw.
That's a good, yeah.
He absorbs energy and he distributes it back out as electricity. And he gets a little too amped up over a punch from Invincible. And he ends up killing his wife and son, which is horrible.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's one of those things where you see the comic book version, you see this version. I do remember like the reveal of their charred bodies on the ground, but in this, it's really interesting because you see like the little flakes of the burned bodies floating by, and I was like, oh, that's rough.
That's definitely elevated a bit, I guess in a sadder way.
Yeah,
and but even still, even after that, it kind of makes Invincible just think about his own moral compass here, and then Powerplex is locked away, and he still is bearing that grudge against him, even to the bitter end of the episode.
Yeah, which that's a really effective scene because Invincible says something pretty profound. He's like, I actually do remember you, or I'm sorry, I do remember your sister and her daughter. I'm sorry about what happened. He like the way the show works, you feel like this is going to have an impact on Powerplex, and he's going to be like, okay, thank you, or he like hears him and he's going to redeem himself, but he's like, no, I want to get out of here and I want to kill you.
Yeah, like, I'm going to get out of here and I'm going to find a way to kill you. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, it's good because it shows that, like, even if you're trying to be a good person, even if you're trying to be the best person you can be, what happens to you, what you're a part of, there's still consequences and you kind of can't escape them.
Yes. Now, I'm curious if we ever will see Powerplex again in the show. So in the comic, and this is spoilers for future issues of the comic here. If you don't want to find out, you just want to enjoy the show, by all means, just come back in like 5 minutes.
There you go.
Or skip ahead 5 minutes. He does come back, and he does get like a second chance by the GTA, whatever it is, the government. He does get put on a team of reformed heroes or villains or whatever you want to call it. And but I don't remember what storyline he comes back in. Like, is it in the Invincible War or is it something later on that I'm just?
Yeah, you read it much more recent than I did, but I was pretty sure that they used him against all the Invincible clones or whatever.
Okay, so he's gonna come back real soon then.
Pretty soon. Yeah.
I feel like it was stretched out a bit further from in the comic. Like he was in an issue or two, and then you just didn't see him for a while, and then he was there for a couple panels here and there, but not like a huge role.
Right. It's funny because there's always these parallels between this and Superman, and I guess maybe sometimes Spider-Man too, because he's kind of like Spider-Man with being like a young hero and trying to balance his social life, but then he's obviously like Superman with like the Superman powers and coming from his dad's from another planet and stuff.
Yeah.
And so of course, like I said already, that this reminds me of Man of Steel. But do you remember in the comics when like they brought back the city of Kandor and there was a whole bunch of Kryptonians on Earth?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like what the Invincible War is like. Because now all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of people like Invincible flying around. And I'm pretty sure the GDA does use people that have fought Invincible against them.
Yeah. You definitely get a lot of the people that kind of held their own before against Invincible. Although, to me, the power skills are all really messed up.
Right.
At some points, it's like, Invincible is X strong and he could kill people with whatever, and now all these other people would just get wrecked. But now they're suddenly able to hold their own against these versions of Invincible that had literally taken over the planet.
Right.
So it really gets confusing to me. That's maybe like a slight detriment I put towards the series. There is that all the power levels get really out of whack, which I guess makes sense because it's like you have to keep scaling things up, and you have to keep people like relevant in a way. Some characters relevant because you can't just have Invincible be the sole focus, even though it is his book.
Right. No, I know. I mean, I guess we're going to all see this happening pretty soon too, because you're under the impression that this is going to happen in the last 2 episodes.
I mean, it's kind of has to, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, what else are they going to do in the next 2 episodes if not that?
Right. So I think I've already asked you this before, but now since you've read through that whole sequence, do you think that they're going to show other Image superheroes in that?
No, I had read that they already flat out declined that Spawn will be there. It was just in like one panel, but like that they're not going to show any of the non original heroes in this. I don't think.
So like no Savage Dragon or like Dynamo 5 people or anything like that.
I think the boat sailed on Savage Dragon. Like we should have seen them by now if they were ever going to do it. Dynamo 5, I don't know who created that.
Jay Faber, who wrote one of the episodes of Invincible this season.
Yeah, that maybe. Like some of those things, they're a little more homegrown.
Right.
May show up, but like I'm really curious if Tech Jacket ever shows up.
Right. Okay. I'm actually really glad you brought that up, right? Because one of our thumbnails that we used is that picture of Invincible flying like this, and then Eve is like right next to him, and she's got that armor. And I felt like her armor that she made looked like Tech Jacket.
It kind of like Tech Jacket. Yeah, that's a good call out. Yeah. It's things like that I'm kind of curious if they'll use it. But like things that were established prior to Invincible, like Spawn, Savage Dragon, things like that. Like I don't think they're going to show up. Like I think even like they have like is it the Max? I think he shows up in a panel somewhere or some other like giant rock looking guy that I definitely remember from something, but I can't remember his name.
Well, it's not Badrock from Youngblood?
Yeah, Bedrock. Yes, I'm sorry, it's Bedrock. Yes, that's right. I don't expect characters like that to show up, but things that started here and spun out of it may show up.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll see. We got 2 more episodes. One of them is available right now.
Yes.
Yeah. So, did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about with this episode of Invincible?
No, I don't think so. That should be it.
I'm actually surprised we stretched it out to 22 minutes. That's impressive.
Same here.
Well, Brian and I, we have one more recording to do today. We're going to talk about Daredevil Born Again, episodes 1 and 2. So we're going to hop over to that. If you are here for the first time, why don't you come check that out too? But besides that, you can always subscribe. We could definitely use some more viewers. We could use some more comments too. But we're going to cover probably next week the last 2 episodes of Invincible, right?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So you sexy ladies and men, we will see you guys next week for some more Invincible. And okay.